The look on my father's face. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was just pure, unfiltered confusion. My father, Robert, a retired army logistician who worships real warriors, was frozen. His mouth was half open, his eyes darting between me and the young man he'd been fawning over. That young man, Petty Officer Ramirez, a Navy SEAL my father idolized, was standing at a rigid parade ground attention. Sweat was beading on his hairline, his eyes locked forward. He wasn't at attention for my father. He was at attention form. Before my father could process it, a man with an admiral's star on his collar, Admiral Cole, the base commander, stepped right past him as if he were invisible. Cole didn't even glance his way. He stopped in front of me, his expression all business. "Ma'am," he said, his voice low and urgent. "We weren't expecting you on the demonstration floor. Is there a problem with the protocol? Just 10 minutes earlier, we were at a family and influencer day at a SOCOM base. My father had been invited, and he dragged me along, insisting I come see some real heroes." Another day of being the prop, I thought. He'd spent the morning fawning over our guide, this Poe Ramirez, a young, hard-as-nails SEAL who was everything my father admired. I could see it in his eyes. Ramirez was the warrior son he'd always wished he had, instead of, well, me. We stopped by a display of gear and my father decided it was time to explain me. He clapped Ramirez on the arm. "This is my daughter, Kira," he said, his voice full of that false, jovial tone. She's in IT. Pushes papers for the government." He gestured at the SEAL. "Not like you, son. You're the real deal." I just stood there, biting the inside of my cheek. This was his favorite routine, the real warrior versus the paper pusher. I'd heard it at Thanksgiving, at birthdays, any time he had an audience. He wasn't done. He laughed, a loud barking sound, and pointed at me. "She's so quiet the Taliban wouldn't even notice you." He slapped Ramirez's shoulder again. "Thank God this man is out there. That's a real warrior." I saw Ramirez smile, a polite twitch. He was about to nod and move on. But then he stopped. He just froze. All the polite swagger evaporated. He turned and drearily looked at me, as if seeing me for the first time. His eyes widened, and I saw the flicker. It wasn't just recognition. It was a jolt of pure professional fear. "Wait," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Ma'am? You're Artemis, aren't you? From the Overwatch briefs?" My father's smile froze, his hand still on the SEAL's shoulder. Ramirez had just used my operational call sign. A call sign that was never to be spoken in an open, unsecured environment. To understand the protocol-shattering reckoning that was about to unfold, you have to understand the two lives I was living. My father's study is his sanctuary, the one place in the house where his word is absolute. He calls it his wall of heroes. It's a meticulously curated shrine to the men he respects, a testament to his version of legacy. There's his grandfather, stoic in a grainy World War II uniform. There's his own logistics corps photo, though it's pointedly, almost comically, him behind a desk, a fact he never mentions. And then there's the centerpiece, a high-gloss framed photo of Ramirez's entire SEAL team, a group he sponsors through donations as if he's their personal patron. My own accomplishments are, technically, there. My master's in data science and my BA in international relations, both framed, are tucked behind a world's best dad mug I got him in high school. He never moves them. He doesn't even see them. They are just part of the clutter, obstacles on the way to the lamp, while the photo of men he's never met is polished weekly. To him, I'm not Kira, the analyst. I am Kiki, or, on days when he's feeling particularly dismissive, Mouse. I'm something small, something quiet, something to be patted on the head and safely ignored. My boring desk job, as he's labeled it, is a source of constant, casual ridicule. It's his favorite joke. I can still hear his voice from last Thanksgiving, booming across the table, making everyone stop and look. Ramirez is out in, he'll say, a classified-sounding location doing God's work. That's a legacy, Kira. He looked right at me, not with malice, just A profound, bottomless pity. It was the same look he gave a three-legged dog. You should really try to find work that matters. The words landed like stones, heavy and familiar, just as they always did. And just like always, I'd just nod and ask someone to pass the potatoes. It was easier than trying to explain the unexplainable. But my work wasn't for him to see. It couldn't be. My reality wasn't a warm wood-paneled study filled with old glory. It was a sterile, windowless room. A skiff. A sensitive, compartmented information facility. It's a place so secure you can't even bring a fitness tracker inside. A place where the air itself feels pressurized and silent. In that dark, cold room, lit only by the data streaming across 3 monitors, I wasn't Kiki. I wasn't Mouse. In there, I am Artemis. I'm not in IT. I am a GS-15 senior analyst for the Joint Special Operations Command. JSOC. I don't push papers. I build the target packages. I validate the intel. I'm the final human checkpoint before a mission goes green. I'm the one who says ayes or no. I remember a few months ago, sitting in that very chair, the clock on the wall reading 0300. I was on a secure VTC with General Thorne, a 3-star who didn't care about your feelings, only your data. The feed was live, the tension so thick you could barely breathe. The strike team was already on the bird. I held up my hand and the entire room fell silent. General, the target's pattern of life has shifted, I said, my voice steady even. The cell data is anomalous. The asset is not in place. This is a ghost. I took a breath, the weight of the call, the lives on the line, pressing down. I am red lighting this op. The collateral risk is unacceptable. Stand down the strike team. The general stared, his face a granite mask. A tense, 5-second pause that felt like an eternity. Then he just nodded, a single, sharp motion. Copy, Artemis, stand down, it's your call. It's your call. In that world, my word was final. My analysis was trusted with lives, the men my father idolizes, the real warriors like Ramirez, the men on his wall. They are the ones I am responsible for. They are the ones I protect, not just from the enemy, but from bad intel, from a wasted night, from a disastrous mistake. My father worships the spear. But I'm the one who decides where, when, and if the spear strikes. For 10 years, I'd maintained the information barrier as a matter of national security. My father, in his ignorance, just tore a hole through it. He hadn't just insulted me, he'd insulted the entire chain of command. And he'd done it on a federal installation where protocol is the only thing that matters. What? What's Artemis? My father sputtered, his head snapping between me and the seal. He's talking nonsense, Kira. He was trying to laugh it off, to dismiss it, but the panic was already in his eyes. I didn't look at him. I couldn't. All the years of being Kiki and Mouse, all the passive-aggressive dinner table insults, and the pats on the head, they just evaporated. The daughter he thought he knew, the one who just nodded and passed the potatoes, she was gone. In her place was Artemis. My eyes were locked on Ramirez. My voice came out quiet, cold and stripped of all emotion. A voice my father had never heard. Petty Officer Ramirez, I stated, the words sharp and precise. You just broke operational security. You do not use a call sign in an open, unsecured environment. Ever. Is that clear? Ramirez, the real warrior, went sheet white. The blood drained from his face and he snapped to a rigid, quivering attention, his eyes fixed on a point just over my head. Ma'am, he stammered, his voice tight. My apologies, ma'am. It will not happen again. No excuse, ma'am. He was terrified. He knew in an instant, he'd just made a career-ending mistake. This, of course, my father could not understand. All he saw was his hero being dressed down by me. He saw his entire worldview turning upside down, and he reacted just as I knew he would, with pure, unadulterated rage. Kira, what do you think you're doing? He bellowed, his face turning a deep, blotchy red. You stop this. He's a SEAL. He jabbed a finger at me, his hand trembling. You're a glorified secretary. You apologize to this warrior right now. His voice was loud, echoing in the open space. Other families, other uniformed personnel, they all stopped. They were all looking. For him, it was a moment of defending a hero. For me, it was just Tuesday. Another scene, another moment of him needing to prove I was nothing. But this time, we weren't at the Thanksgiving table. He had no authority here. As his shout faded, a new voice cut through the tension, sharp, powerful, and radiating pure command. Is there a problem here? It was the moment from my flash forward. Admiral Cole, the base commander, was striding towards us, his face a mask of granite. This was the man I was really here to meet. Under the convenient cover of Family Day, he knew exactly who I was. His eyes scanned the scene in a second. My father, red-faced and belligerent, Ramirez, still, locked at a terrified attention, and me, standing perfectly calm in my civilian clothes. My father opened his mouth, puffed up with indignation, ready to correct the Admiral. But before he could utter a single word, Admiral Cole stepped past him, angled his body to block him out completely, and locked eyes with me. "Ms. Jensen," he said, his voice a low rumble. "I was briefed Artemis was on site. I didn't realize you were bringing uncleared guests." My father, Robert, actually scoffed. He was trying to find his footing, trying to reestablish the hierarchy he understood. He puffed out his chest, the picture of aggrieved authority. "Admiral, I think there's a serious misunderstanding," he said, forcing a chuckle. "I'm Robert Jensen, retired logistics. This is just my daughter, Kira. She's in I-2." He then had the nerve to gesture at Ramirez, who was still a pale, sweating statue. "This SEAL, this is the hero." He said it all to the Admiral, but he was looking at me, his eyes daring me to contradict him in front of real men. Admiral Cole didn't even turn. His eyes remained locked on mine. The dismissal was so complete, it was as if my father hadn't spoken at all. "Ma'am," he repeated, his voice firm. "Is there a protocol violation?" This was it. The moment where my two worlds collided. I held the Admiral's gaze, my own voice as steady and cold as his. "Admiral," I said, "Petty Officer Ramirez inadvertently used my call sign. That's an internal security matter." I paused, then tilted my head just slightly. "But the larger issue is that my guest has been undermining this demonstration and showing public disrespect to your operator." I called him my guest. I saw his face twitch. It was the first time in my life I had ever put him in his place. He exploded. It was a raw, guttural sound of pure, wounded pride. "Undermining?" he roared, his voice cracking. "I'm a veteran. I know protocol." He finally turned his rage fully on me, his finger jabbing at my chest. "Who the hell do you think you are, Kira? You're my daughter. You push paper." Then, Admiral Cole turned. Slowly. He was a big man, and he seemed to fill the entire space, sucking all the air out. He faced my father, his face pure granite. When he spoke, his voice wasn't loud. It was worse. It was a low, grinding rumble of absolute authority. "Mr. Jensen," he began, "I am Admiral Cole, Commander, Naval Special Warfare Command." He let that title hang in the air. "The woman you are screaming at," and he gestured to me, "is not in IT. She is the senior analyst for the Joint Task Force," he continued, each word a hammer blow, dismantling my father's reality. "Her call sign, Artemis, which your friend so loudly announced, is known by every Tier 1 operator, because she is the one who designs their missions, validates their targets, and gives the final go command that saves their lives." I watched my father's face. The red color drained away, leaving a sickly, waxy pallor. He was looking at me, but it was like he was seeing a ghost, like his wall of heroes was crumbling in his mind brick by brick. He was seeing the name on the wall was mine. The Admiral wasn't finished. He leaned in, his voice dropping but gaining an intensity that was terrifying. "Her clearance level is Yankee White. Her analysis is briefed directly to the Joint Chiefs. That paper she pushes?" He let the insulting word hang in the air. "It is the only reason men like Petty Officer Ramirez come home to their families at all." He paused, letting the full weight of the next words land. "The men you idolize, They work for her. My father just deflated. He looked small. He looked old. The Admiral lowered his voice even further, so only the four of us could hear. You will now apologize to Petty Officer Ramirez for compromising his focus. You will apologize to Tom for disrupting this event. He took a step closer to my father. And then you will apologize to her for, well, Mr. Jensen, I'll leave that part up to you, but as of now, your guest privileges are revoked. You will be escorted off this base. My father had spent his life building a fantasy on his wall of heroes. In 30 seconds, Admiral Cole had torn it all down with the two things my father couldn't argue with, the truth and the undisputed chain of command. My father was speechless. He just stood there, his mouth slightly open, a man whose entire operating system had just crashed. He looked at me, then at the Admiral, then at Ramirez, and all he could get out was a low mumble. He couldn't say it. He couldn't apologize. He couldn't even form a sentence. All the bluster, all the certainty, all the retired logistics authority, it was just gone. He wasn't the patriarch. He was just a small old man, confused and humiliated on a military base. I felt a strange quiet, not pity, not triumph, just quiet. I turned to Admiral Cole, my voice level. Thank you, Admiral. I'll handle it from here. He gave me a single, sharp nod of respect. My subordinate. My guest. My problem. I turned to my father. The Kikian mouse he'd spent 30 years talking down to was gone, and Artemis was all that was left. The tour is over, I said, my voice not unkind but not kind either. It was simply a statement of fact. You should go. I then turned to the still frozen petty officer. As you were, Ramirez, I said, and his shoulders just barely relaxed. And watch your six. And your mouth. He gave a shaky nod, a wave of eternal relief washing over his face. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. He understood. He got a second chance. My father, he didn't get one. My father, Robert, just deflated completely. He looked at his shoes. An MP, who had been standing by, quietly gestured toward the exit. My father didn't look at me again. He just turned. He walked away alone, his shoulders slumped. He walked past the rows of families, past the displays of high-tech gear, and past the very warriors he so desperately, so pathetically wanted to be a part of. He was just an UN-cleared guest being escorted out. 6 months later, I was in the skiff. The same sterile, windowless room, but it felt different. It felt like home. I was at the head of the table, not just a participant. I was leading the brief for a new operation, my voice confident, my data precise. I was fully, completely Artemis. This team, the data specialists, the comms experts, the strategists who sat with me in the dark, this was my family. It wasn't a family built on obligation or history. It was a family built on competence, on mutual respect, on a shared mission, where every single person in the room knew exactly what I was worth. That feeling was cemented a few weeks later at a formal military ball. For my entire life I'd been the quiet one at the family table, the one in the corner, the one whose achievements were tucked behind a coffee mug. Now, I was sitting at a table with General Thorne and Admiral Cole. I wasn't an afterthought, I was a guest of honor. At one point, General Thorne stood up, his glass raised. He didn't make a loud speech. He just looked at me. To Artemis, he said, his voice a low rumble that carried across the nearby tables. The one they all whisper about. They drank to me. I looked across the room and caught someone's eye. It was Ramirez. He was in his dress uniform, standing with his own team. He saw me. He didn't smile. He didn't wave. He simply stood a little taller, raised his glass in a sharp, silent salute, and drank. It was a gesture of genuine, earned battlefield respect. It was everything my father had ever wanted from men like him. And it was given to me. Later that night, as I was getting my coat, my phone buzzed. I almost ignored it. It was a text. From Dad. My thumb hovered over the notification, a familiar coldness settling in my stomach. I opened it. It wasn't a long, emotional apology. He wasn't capable of that. It was just a few sentences. Kira, I saw a special on the news about unsung heroes in intelligence. I thought of you. I read that line 3 times. I am proud of you. I just stood there. I read the words. It was the first time in my life he had ever said it without a but. I'm proud of you, but I'm proud of you, even if. This was it. I thought I would feel some great rushing wave of forgiveness, of closure. I didn't. It wasn't the end-all be-all. My worth was no longer tied to his acknowledgement. My value wasn't up for his debate. But it was a start. It was an old man, alone with his wall of heroes, finally understanding he'd had one living in his house all along. I took a breath. I typed back 2 words, "Thank you, Dad." I put my phone away. Admiral Cole was walking over, a file in his hand, already asking my opinion on a new strategic threat. I turned back to him, back to the lights, back to my real life. My father spent his whole life collecting heroes for his wall. He just never realized he'd raised one. He wanted me to be noticed by warriors, but he never understood in my world. The most powerful person in the room is the one no one is ever allowed to see. If you've ever had your quiet competence mistaken for weakness, share your story in the comments. In this community, we know the difference between loud talk and real power.